Jed, and for today's video I'm speaking about our microbiome, primarily the gut microbiome, the bacteria that exist in our digestive tract, and how to refresh and replenish those. A great percentage of the population have significant disruptions or imbalances in the bacteria populations in their gut. Bacteria can function both in a beneficial or symbiotic manner as well as in a pathogenic or illness-associated manner. And in the gut, we tend to want to maintain a certain balance of ideal amounts of the beneficial bacteria and to greatly limit and keep down the amount of any of the bacteria that just proliferate in a way that becomes pathogenic or pathological. There are a variety of factors that influence the activity of all these bacteria, populations of the different bacteria in our gut, and that includes our psychological states as well as our environment and our diet and foods and medicines that we're consuming. So all of those things can affect that. And in our modern way of living, we're exposed to a lot of things that tend to disrupt the bacteria in our gut, to kill off many of the beneficial microorganisms, and that can lead to an overgrowth of the types of microorganisms, the bacteria, that we associate with illnesses. So a lot of psychological stress that interferes with our energy system, and things are really governed by energy and frequency. So when you're in a distressed state, that changes the patterns in your gut. It tends to weaken your digestive system and lead to the suppression of the beneficial bacteria and overgrowths of some of the illness-associated bacteria. When we're exposed to various chemicals that are toxic in our environment, things like herbicides and pesticides and gas fumes and other things that could be harmful to our body, that affects the microbiome. It can kill many of the beneficial bacteria. Taking antibiotics, and people usually are taking those or prescribe those when they have an overgrowth of the pathogenic microorganisms, but those antibiotic medicines generally don't differentiate or discriminate in terms of what they're killing off. So in addition to suppressing an infection from a harmful bacteria, they're also wiping out the beneficial bacteria, which leads to long-term problems, to the likelihood of more imbalances in the future, more overgrowths of the harmful bacteria, because the beneficial ones that keep things in balance have been wiped out. So it's something you want to be cautious about in terms of using antibiotic medicines, and not just the prescription medicines, but even some of the alternative natural or herbal type antibiotic substances. If you overuse those can also suppress some of the beneficial bacteria and lead to imbalances. we can explore ways of replenishing and restoring that healthy amount of the beneficial bacteria and the optimal balance of the microorganisms in our gut. And there are different layers and levels to how we can do that. So we'll go through the physical or chemical level, as well as the energetic and the psychological level. So we're going to write some things up on the board here. So we have their beneficial or symbiotic, and then we have the harmful or pathogenic, and we can look at that word patho like pathology. So it's something that's an illness or disease state, and genic like the genesis or creation of. So those are understood to foster or create in some way a state of disease or illness. Not necessarily in and of themselves. There may be other variables or factors that lead to that, other stresses that lead to those bacteria overgrowing or proliferating. But certainly the presence of too much of those bacteria is associated with being ill. So what we want to do is make sure we have enough of the beneficial ones and not many, not in excess of the ones that can become harmful. So the first factor I'm going to discuss is the psychological and spiritual factor, since that's the deepest layer of our energy system and of our being. So if we're in a distressed state, if we're angry, anxious, fearful, if we're feeling sad, if we're feeling shameful, all of those things can kind of suppress our energy flow. It can, in a sense, lower the frequency or the energy wave pattern that's surrounding our physical body, and the physical chemistry and the physiological activity is responding to the energy. It responds to those subtle emotional and psychological energies, as well as to the whole electromagnetic spectrum, including sound frequencies and light frequencies, including the ultraviolet and infrared part of the spectrum. And of course there's all the different electromagnetic technologies that we use nowadays, things like Wi-Fi and mobile phones. All these different devices are putting out wavelengths that can impact our health, and some of those are disrupting the microbiome, the activity of these bacteria and microbes in our body. So we may want to limit our exposure to those artificial man-made electromagnetic fields and increase our exposure to the natural light spectrum, such as going outdoors in the sunlight. And if you can be outside at least half an hour, perhaps a couple hours a day, that gives you exposure to those frequencies that are helping replenish your energy. if we think about our gut area, we can consider the name that's used for that area the solar plexus, solar relating to the sun, and the sun does have a significant impact on that energy center. It's the center really of our personal power, and the more empowered we feel, the more capable we are of digesting our life experience on a physical level. That's reflected in digesting our food, and we need the healthy, beneficial probiotic bacteria there in the intestines to help support the digestion of our food. We can be conscious of what we're consuming in terms of food, of our diet, and avoiding foods that contain different chemicals or additives that could disrupt the gut, that could feed the harmful bacteria, or that could suppress or kill the beneficial bacteria. So you want to stick to more natural whole foods, avoiding the processed type foods that have the refined sugars and refined oils, things that our body can't really process properly, and which could end up leading to too much of the harmful bacteria feeding on them in our gut. We can consume more raw foods, such as raw vegetables and raw fruits, since foods in their natural state actually contain the bacteria that nature designs to break them down. Nature is very efficient. It naturally recycles everything. So when the life force energy of a living organism starts to diminish or withdraw, the microorganisms that were contained with that particular organism, whether it's a plant or animal, will start to break down that organism. So whether you're eating an apple or a piece of lettuce or a piece of fish, whatever food you're eating, it has microorganisms that are present with it that are there ready to break it down. And when you consume raw foods, some of those bacteria are coming into your body and surviving, going down into the intestine, where they can start to help repopulate the microbes in your intestine if you've had the beneficial ones depleted. So some of the raw fruits and vegetables can be helpful for that, and to even more quickly accelerate the repopulation of strains of probiotics, you can use some fermented type foods, things like kimchi and kefir and yogurt and sauerkraut. Those have beneficial microbes, probiotics in them, especially if they haven't been too processed. So you want them made more of the traditional way. If you get yogurt that's been heat processed, pasteurized, that could destroy a lot of the beneficial probiotics in it, so it would have much less use or benefit in that regard. Now everyone is in their own unique state of health, so some things that might be useful or beneficial to consume for some people might actually be harmful or aggravate health conditions for other people. And the fermented foods are an example of that, where people often can benefit from them to repopulate the beneficial microbes in the gut. But people sometimes have health conditions where they become actually susceptible to the negative impact of things like alcohol and vinegar and too much of any bacterial strain at one time. So if you give those types of foods or even some probiotic supplements, it could make some conditions worse. So you want to be mindful of what state you're in before you consume any particular foods or supplements to see if it's ideal for your particular health concerns, for your energy state or your biochemical state. The fermented foods can be a useful tool for some people for health or healing, but for others it could actually worsen their condition. So you want to find whatever helps support your own unique biological state, come back toward balance. So we have different elemental properties in play. Some people might need more heat, some people might need more cooling, some people might need more protein, others might need more carbohydrates or oils. Some people need certain vitamins, others need certain minerals. There's so many different variables and elements involved. And we want to work on the energetic and psychological levels as much as we can to build up the capacity of the body to self-heal, to restore its own inner balance. Some of the quickest ways to replenish or refresh your probiotic gut bacteria involve refreshing the energy or balancing your nervous system and your psychological state. So things like breath work, yoga, meditation, Reiki, Qigong, all of those methods can provide some pretty rapid shifts, often even more rapid than taking a direct biochemical supplement, and often more long-lasting. So if you're able to restore the healthy energy flow, your body's going to maintain its own microbial balance, and that can last. Whereas if you're in a very stressful state and you try to replenish the microbiomes with a fermented food or a probiotic supplement, that might temporarily provide some benefit, but because of the stress that's affecting you and that hasn't been resolved, then you might just go right back into the same imbalanced state. Your biochemistry will be disrupted again because you haven't addressed the underlying energetic or psychological and emotional factors. So I encourage everyone to think of this in this holistic way, that all of these factors are impacting our microbiome. So we have diet, we have herbs that can affect it, medications, there are recreational drugs. A lot of those are very disruptive to the microbiome. And we have psychology and stress that disrupts the energy. And then we have energy frequencies. That includes EMFs, light, and sound. So the type of music you listen to, that could have an impact. Are you listening to some type of discordant or aggressive kind of music? Or are you listening to relaxing, harmonizing, soothing music? So those will affect the microbiology, the microbiome, the different microorganisms that work in accord or in congruence with your body's physiology. I hope that this brief overview has given you some things to ponder and consider. For those who are interested in holistic health, I invite you to visit my website, phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.